Hello, everyone. HJ here. Today, I want to talk to you about some potential uses of Haki in the One Piece story. Where we are currently is in the middle of the flashback that takes us to God Valley, just as a timestamp for when this video came out. So, in this, we're seeing a lot of things happen with Haki that we've never seen before. Really, just some powers being showcased that we've never seen before. And I've been a One Piece fan for years, just now getting into the YouTube scene. And there have been some theories that I've had for years, some disproven entirely, some disproven in part. And I believe they do still kind of fit as possibilities within the rest of the story, especially we're getting into the place where Haki and other abilities are being taken to the nth degree and being used in ways we never would have thought about in the first few chapters. For example, when we got to Whole Cake, we got to see Haki being used in observation Haki to the point where Katakuri could see into the future. When we got to Wano, we were seeing Rio, a form of armament Haki that was able to completely bypass external defenses and move inside of a target, damaging internal instead of external. Very powerful. We now have a few answers as for how certain things happened in Marineford, the Haki wall of the admirals and things like that. And those are some pretty unique abilities that we likely wouldn't have thought of when Haki was first introduced. And in that, over the years, I started to think about what are some other ways that Haki could be used. See, there was a point in time where I had the belief that Roger, being someone, let's just say the strongest character in the story, at his peak, had Conqueror's Haki on such a level that he could actually control the minds of other people. Now, this doesn't seem too likely today, but there are certain precursors or hints at this still being a possibility in the show or in the series, just not with Roger. And my reasoning for this at the time was noticing how whenever people used Conqueror's Haki, their eyes changed. And I noticed that in the moment when it showed the scene where Roger is asking Garp to look after his son and protect his son, Roger's eyes looked the same. So my understanding at the time, my theory at the time was Roger spoke using Conqueror's Haki, commanding Garp to go and look after his son against his will. Even thinking about the idea that, well, they had to go and do a genocide around this same time. Garp was still responsible for killing a bunch of potential kids of Roger while protecting his actual kid. That was my logic behind it, that why would Garp go through with something like that just for a friend? I was like, no. Considering Conqueror's Haki speaks to the exertion of will onto another, I saw that maybe Roger used Conqueror's Haki in a form of mind control. But while that might not be the correct way that circumstance occurred, the possibility of that still being a Conqueror's Haki ability is very much on the table, especially with seeing how Emu is able to completely mind control and even kind of operate through his subordinates or her subordinates. We don't know what Emu is just yet. That is a strong possibility. Conquerors, the ability to exert the will of a king out into the world, being used for mind control. I even saw it within Luffy's ability to make friends, how he had this unique ability that Mihawk talked about at that time, where he says, most powerful ability, he's able to gain allies. I saw that also kind of fitting within this mind control archetype of Conqueror's Haki, where a king can pretty much summon an army, the creation of an army, the subjugation of will, all of that fits within this idea of mind control, which in our own way we can kind of see as a heightened degree of what Shanks did when he spoke to the Sea King and just told it to get lost. And of course, we'll come back to that, but this is my first idea. My second idea kind of deals with observation hockey because where we are in the story, Conqueror's hockey has been used all types of ways. Armament hockey has been used all types of ways, but observation doesn't really have any too many unique uses. And one day I was thinking, I was like, well, what is a way that observation could be used that actually helps the story in some way? And one of the ideas that I had was kind of like Shatterpoint from Star Wars, the ability to detect flaws in your target so that you know where to strike and how much power to put into it, being able to detect weaknesses in structures and in people, flaws within the patterns of your opponent. Shatterpoint fitting within One Piece kind of works a little too well, knowing where to hit and when to hit. Continuing with observation hockey, an idea that I had was mind reading or telepathy. We kind of see this being used by Emu right now in the way that Emu is able to communicate with their subordinates across the world. Even the way that Shanks was able to communicate uh, with Green Bull on Wano. Somewhat, sort of, kind of. There's a precursor there if it ever did fully flesh out to where they can actually fully communicate just using hockey. But not just mind reading, mind reading slash telepathy, communicating via observation, being able to hear the thoughts of others. I believe that's possible. The next ability I have is telekinesis. I could see this as an advanced form of Conquerors, the ability to speak to matter itself and it goes where you tell it to. Nothing too crazy, not too much on a Star Wars level, but moving objects to the side, maybe throwing objects up, just telling it to move a little bit. You can speak to the trees, they bend out of your way. You can speak to doors and doors open for you at your will. Simple things like that. Maybe in combat, you can kind of commission certain objects to move on your behalf. Simple things like that I can see being used through Conqueror's hockey. The next form, the next idea that I have for Conquerors again is resurrection or pure immortality. The ability to bring yourself back to life, understanding that hockey deals with the will of the individual. Some people have so much will that they refuse to die or refuse to stay dead, and I can kind of see this working. This may or may not be the cause behind the current regeneration that we're seeing in the current story, but I see this as also a possibility. We saw this with Luffy. We saw this with Kaido. We saw this with Big Mom, where because of their conquerors, they can black out and be completely defeated, but still staying alive. Which is to this degree that some people aren't 100% sure that Kaido and Big Mom are dead. Just because conquerors kind of makes it hard. Their will is just a bit too strong. So whether this is just meaning that your life can't end because you refuse, or if it does, you make yourself come back. Very interesting, very possible. Next is an armament idea, which I believe everyone has thought about at some point, which is the infamous Haki laser idea. That armament getting to such a point that you can fire concussive energy blasts of pure Haki. And we kind of see this, especially with the way that Garp, Roger, and The heavy hitters of the One Piece world are starting to use their conquerors and observation together in these explosions. I don't think it's too difficult to see them focusing it just in a direction and letting their hockey do all the work for them. Of course, we have the Roku Ogun from the CP9 special abilities, but I believe this should be something that could be able to be done just with hockey alone. I see it as more of an armament ability, but if you want, you can go conquerors. Next, we kind of just have commanding nature, whether that's the plants, the animals, nature itself. I could even see this being used to command the water itself, to split before you, um, communicating with the birds, the animals. You know, you think of Luffy training with Rayleigh during the time skip, and he's dealing with all the animals, and the form that we usually see is just them using their hockey to intimidate animals. But what if you can actually use your hockey to command those same animals? This kind of fits the same idea of mind control that I mentioned earlier, but I just wanted to focus it a bit more just on nature itself, whether it's the plants, the animals. Highly possible. Next could either be an armament or a conqueror's ability, that being the use of energy constructs. Nothing too crazy, not necessarily Green Lantern tiers, but being able to shape the form of your hockey to a certain degree. We kind of see this as an artistic display. We're not sure yet how legit it is, where sometimes the attack takes the form of a dragon or a bird or something like that. But I could see people making thin hockey blades around their arms, larger hockey encoded fists, and things like that. Nothing too crazy, but possible. Maybe even temporary platforms in the same way that the admirals were able to make a hockey wall together. What if you were able to make a temporary platform in order to climb up somewhere or get somewhere higher, maybe even fly by standing on this construct and moving it around? That's a bit of a stretch for what I think will happen in One Piece, but possibility is the name of the video. And something that kind of fits within this is my last idea is clogging, is what I call it. Similar to the dangerous form of waterbending in the Avatar The Last Airbender verse, which we have as blood bending, this idea would be clogging, being able to emit Haki, similar to Rio, but using that Rio to bypass their external defenses and then put a blockage of Haki inside of their body somewhere. So being able to stop the heart by simply stopping the arteries or the veins, clogging them, creating blood clots, just by holding, you know, injecting Haki into your opponent and then holding a construct there, cause people to pass out. From the opportunities are kind of limitless. You can stop someone's heart. You can interfere with someone's ability to breathe. These are simple faculties that I believe Haki, if used precisely, can actually do, especially with them already introducing Rio and again the Haki wall and other things like that. I believe it would just be bypassing and then rehardening. Call it rehardening. That works. I like the word clogging, but these are a few of the ideas I had of how Haki could potentially be used going forward. I guess another idea I have is, as it pertains to like the resurrection immortality idea, you could just throw regular healing into that as well as a conqueror's ability, refusing to let someone else die. Got enough Haki? Maybe. Y'all tell me, what are some other ideas you would have? Do Out of all of the ones that I've mentioned here today, which ones do you think are the most plausible? Which ones do you think are completely outlandish? Y'all let me know in the comments down below and tell me some of yours. What are some interesting ways that you think Haki could be used for? Or even better, that we might potentially see by the end of the story? That's it. Until next time, peace.